plant-based diets appear to be beneficial in terms of both preventing prostate cancer and also better outcomes in men who already have prostate cancer. Prostate cancer, thankfully, is a highly curable cancer, and many prostate cancers are low risk, and people actually have a much higher chance of dying from cardiovascular disease than from their prostate cancer. So, even aside from the potential benefits for the prostate cancer, we should be thinking more holistically.
This is the Man Up Podcast, a doctor's guide to men's health. Each week on our podcast, we interview the top specialists of the field on various topics in men's health. You have questions that you are too afraid to ask, we have the answers. This week, our episode is titled, Eat Your Greens, exploring how plant-based diets can impact men's health issues. I'm Dr. Kevin Chun. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Dr. Justin Dubin. Justin, the NFL season's over. Congratulations
for
to
you,
your Giants.
for you.
Whoa.
For
I
you.
said the regular season is over. Congratulations to your Giants.
You said the regular season. I thought you said
you're correct.
Season
you're correct.
is over.
Yes, that's correct. The Steelers season is over. So,
but you know what? You got a quarterback. I think you got a quarterback.
I hope so.
Kenny Pickett looks good.
He looks good. Mac Jones looked good for the Patriots that first year too. So we'll see what happens next year.
That's true. But I actually have always had more faith in Kenny Pickett than Mac Jones. So
that's true.
He was at Pitt. They didn't have as much talent. And also he's just like a homegrown guy. You got to root for him. But my Giants are in.
Who they playing?
The Vikings.
Oh,
and I think that is a very winnable game. Absolutely
a
winnable game. I mean, they should have won or could have won in the first go about. They lost on a 61-yard field goal.
Right.
So I will be watching that Sunday, probably eating non-vegan things, unfortunately, non-plant-based. Some pizza
tie into our
for sure. Yeah, I had to do a good tie in there. So, it's January 2023. A lot of people have some New Year's resolutions. That's why
get to the gym, all this stuff, right? Resetting yourself.
Yeah. Do you have any New Year's resolutions, by the way?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing this year that I wanted to do was kind of go running into the, I didn't want to start on January 1st because I feel like that's what I always do. I always go January 1st, I'm going to hit the gym, make sure I Peloton a certain amount. But this year I started a month before actually. And I feel pretty good about myself.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm kind of cruising through the New Year.
So you're going to quit a month earlier is basically.
Yeah. I pretty much spent about 10 days in and I'm done. How about yourself, man?
No, I think some personal goals. I think I feel good about, exercising, eating right. I think that, I think I've been doing that okay for a while now. I could always lose a few pounds, but I'm not complaining. I think, personal goals. This is a year of personal goals. I think I do want to hopefully advance this together, see where we can take this thing.
Yeah.
New job, see where we can take that. It's going to be a lot of traveling, a lot of fun stuff. So I'm excited for 2023. And I think that, in order to live your best life, you want to, be your best self. And that's why we're doing this podcast, of course. And I'm going to ask you, how have you changed your diet? Have you taken any changes, with this, we're going to be exploring plant-based diets in this talk. And I definitely learned a lot. And it did inspire me to be more plant conscious or plant-based in many ways. Have you practiced that at all? Or have you experienced any of that plant-based diet?
Yeah. So I think and we kind of touched upon it during our conversation with Dr. Loeb, but yeah, I actually went through a time where I try to go kind of like a week on a plant-based diet and kind of like a week back to what I conventionally grew up normally ate. And it's tough because you kind of have to do research. I remember that week I tried to do a little bit more cooking at home, learning recipes. And, it is a bit time consuming and it's just learning a lot and and it's a lot of experimental stuff. And I did that for a little while, and I honestly, at the end of that week, I would feel really good. But habits are hard to kind of keep, and I kind of fell out of that. But I would say the one thing I always look back and what they always kind of talk about in terms of building habits is it was a very positive experience. But how about you? Have you ever tried doing any plant-based diet or trying to incorporate that right now?
Well, I have been definitely more conscious of it. As we learn in this episode, there are so many benefits of, excuse me, of being plant based.
Yeah,
But at the same time, once in a while, I like a little bit of a steak, and
I
I
agree.
think moderation is key. But I have consciously reduced a lot of my meat intake. I have increased a lot of, plant-based meals, whether it's using, beans as a protein,
Right.
avocado as a protein,
Lentils.
something lentils. I have been more conscious of that. And I think I enjoy those meals. It's not like I don't, so
Right.
I think it definitely has shifted the way I approach food and how I moderate my intake.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something you can take from this, right? I don't. It's hard to go from one step to another, and we talk about that, going from one extreme to another. But there are baby steps, just like in everything. Very interesting thing. My grandfather went plant based. He went plant based about 2 months ago. He's lost like 15 pounds. Feels great.
Really? But how's
Yeah,
he feel, like, in terms of, like, when you talk to him? Is he like, "I feel great, I feel more energetic," like, what is he saying?
he does. Well, he lost weight. He lost
Okay.
about 15 pounds. He's in shape, but I think one of the keys is I think his protein intake wasn't as strong as it was,
Mm,
but overall he feels much better. He feels good. He says he feels good. He feels lighter. Feels he still feels strong. He doesn't feel like he's lost. He goes to the gym a lot. I don't think he's lost any strength in the gym or anything like that, and has been happy being on the plant based. So that's kind of a sign it's never too late to try new things as well, right? So uh, I thought that was very interesting to
yeah.
bring up.
No,
But you
that's a
know,
great point that you make there right at the end, though, that it's never too late. I mean, it is New Year's, we're talking about, some resetting, starting new things, and, hitting goals, and I think that's a very important thing. It's never too late. So, it's never too late to start. I think there was that one good Nike commercial, right? There's no better time than today instead of tomorrow, something like that. I don't know, but you know,
sounds like a great Nike commercial. I don't remember.
Nike, if you're
But
listening, we could use the sponsorship.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Big fans of Nike, love
Yeah.
Nike. Happy to have you on the show. Uh, but talking about getting started, I think we should get started with the episode. I
Yep.
just want to give a quick shout out to Dr. Stacy Loeb. She's a professor in urology at NYU Langone Medical Center and the Manhattan VA hospital, who specializes in prostate cancer and men's health. She is a huge plant based advocate. She's a big mentor of mine. I've known her for many years. And she's a wonderful physician and a leader in the field of urology. So I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. I hope you'll learn something and take care of yourselves. Happy New Year.
All right. So we are so lucky to have Dr. Loeb on. Dr. Loeb, thank you so much for joining us on our show today.
Thank you so much.
All right. So I think we should just get right into it. I mean,
Yeah.
one thing that I think is very interesting, obviously, you specialize you're a urologist, you specialize a lot in prostate cancer. Just tell us a little bit about the journey into researching dietary habits and their impact on men's health issues, more specifically on plant based, and how you got interested in all of this.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I just don't think that it gets enough attention at all. Patients really want to know, is there something that I could be doing that could help for prostate cancer, erectile dysfunction, and these other issues? And unfortunately, it just isn't emphasized in medical school. A lot of doctors don't really feel comfortable with nutrition. And so a lot of patients just don't really get much information on what they should be doing.
Yeah, I think this is fantastic because, just like you said, in med school, we definitely don't learn much about this at all. And, when
Not
I
at
took a
all.
look, but more at the research. I think there's so much fascinating stuff that I think our listeners really benefit from. So, since we're going to talk a lot about diet, I think we need to define specifics. So, just to give our listeners who are unfamiliar with different diets, can you just explain the difference between, let's say, pescatarian, vegetarian, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, and vegan diets?
Of course. Yeah. So many different terms.
Yeah.
So totally
It's a
confusing.
lot. It's a lot.
A lot. So, pescatarian is someone who doesn't eat meat, but they do eat fish. And typically, these people will eat things like dairy and eggs.
Okay.
A vegetarian does not eat meat or fish, but they typically will consume eggs and dairy.
Okay.
So lacto-ovo vegetarian means you have lacto or milk and you have ovo or eggs.
Okay.
Now you could be an ovo vegetarian and you just have eggs but not milk, or a lacto vegetarian, but vegetarians have some component of typically eggs or dairy, just no meat or fish. Vegan has none of those. There's no animal products in the diet. So that means no meat, no fish, no eggs, and no dairy. But even within the vegan diet, there's really, heterogeneity. People become vegan for many different reasons. So it's really not just a diet, it's also a lifestyle. Some people become a vegan for animal welfare
Right.
reasons. Some people, like Greta Thunberg, do it for environmental reasons, and other people do it for health reasons. So if you are doing it for health reasons, then typically the form of vegan diet that is considered optimal is what's called a whole foods plant-based diet, or whole foods plant-based, WFPB is the
Okay.
abbreviation.
Well,
And that's confusing because Whole Foods is also the name of a grocery store.
Right. So we're not
Here.
endorsing the actual store.
So this is not an advertisement for Whole Foods, the grocery store, but rather Whole Foods, which means eating whole food, not processed food. And so these are things like beans, legumes, fruits, and vegetables in their natural form, not eating things like French fries, which may not have animal products specifically, but nobody would consider that a health food, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I think a lot of people go towards like fried foods and starchy stuff when they're thinking vegetarian. And obviously, as you know, there's so many great options for protein, from healthy starches and other stuff. But I think some people get stuck on thinking about like pasta all the time or French fries or these other less healthy options. Obviously, there are a lot of healthy options. And, you know, I think that that's kind of important to get out there, right? Because you could obviously be a vegetarian and eat very unhealthy, right?
Right. You could be in any of these categories. You could be a meat eater, a pescatarian, a vegetarian, or a vegan, and be very unhealthy if you're mostly eating processed foods with low nutritional value. So, the key to any of these really is to, have a focus on whole foods, and regardless, to try to increase the amount of fruits and vegetables in the diet.
Perfect. So I think um, a lot of the studies that we're going to talk about today are specifically, we're talking about plant based. And you gave us all the definitions of all these different kinds of categories of vegetarianism. When we're talking about the diets in the studies, are we talking about one specific one, or are we talking about a group of them here?
Well, just like these terms are really sort of a catch all, the research has been, in different studies, there's
Okay.
a different diet.
Okay.
There's plenty of studies with Mediterranean diets, which
right.
really are sort of primarily plant based with just small amounts of fish.
Right.
But with a Mediterranean diet, the emphasis is still on lots of fruits and vegetables. Most of the cooking is done with olive oil or plant oils as opposed to, butter or lard in the cooking. So there's lots of studies that have that diet. There's plenty of other studies with an actual vegan diet or whole foods, plant-based. So I guess I would say it really depends on the study, what was looked at, and, good to read the fine print.
Perfect. Yeah, and we're
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
break
no,
them down anyway. So,
yeah. Just I mean, just looking at all of them, it really does range. A lot of them just saying like, this type of diet was used, but it's just important to note, like as said, Dr. Loeb, is basically look at the fine print, because each study you can take some stuff away from it, but there are limitations to it. So let's jump into the first men's health issue we're going to talk about. All right, we're going to talk about prostate cancer. As a prostate cancer specialist, what have you found out about the impact that plant-based diets have on the risk?
That's a great question, and actually very timely, because just yesterday we published a systematic review of the
I
literature on
saw that. Yeah.
plant-based diets and
Yeah,
prostate cancer. So it's great to be here today and talk about the new study. Uh, bottom line is, plant-based diets appear to be beneficial in terms of both preventing prostate cancer and also better outcomes in men who already have prostate cancer. Uh, there's quite a few studies that have looked at plant-based diets of different types in prostate cancer. There were 5 main interventional trials. What this means is that people were actually assigned as part of the study to adopt a plant-based diet. Most of these studies did include a vegan diet, emphasizing whole foods, plant-based foods. And so these trials, the participants were told to adopt the diet, and they had less progression of their prostate cancer.
That's pretty
And
amazing.
then,
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
I
that's
mean,
really amazing.
I think, like I said, a lot of patients ask, is there something I could be doing that could help? And for sure, and listen, prostate cancer, thankfully, is a highly curable cancer,
Right.
and many prostate cancers are low risk, and people actually have a much higher chance of dying from cardiovascular disease than from their prostate cancer. So, even aside from the potential benefits for the prostate cancer, we should be thinking more holistically. How can we help our patients live longer and live
yeah,
better? And so these patients with prostate cancer, of course, they're scared about their cancer, but they're still at risk of having a heart attack just like
right.
everybody else. And sometimes even more so, since some of the treatments for prostate cancer can have an impact on heart health. So I think this is important information.
I totally agree, and like you said, I think it's very empowering to a patient who sometimes feels like they don't have control over whether it's their diagnosis or some other factors in their life, to be able to have some sort of control and change the outcomes, or feel or potentially change the outcomes of what's going on. And I think that's pretty damn amazing. Do we
Yeah.
understand at all the pathophysiology, or like why this may impact it? Like, why do we think plant-based diets are changing the outcomes of prostate cancer?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of reasons, and actually, even more broadly, just for cancer in general.
Hmm.
So, first of all, not a lot of people know this. In fact, not a lot of doctors seem aware of this, but the World Health Organization actually classifies processed meats as a group 1
I had
carcinogen.
no
I
idea.
I read that. I read that in your paper, and I was just. I told everyone around me. I was like, "Did you guys know the WHO has classified processed meats as such a high
So, like,
carcinogen
how
risk?" Right? In its grade.
processed is processed? Honest question. I
So,
don't like. Is
this
there a
means like
threshold?
bacon, salami, deli meats, that kind of hot dogs.
Oh
This is
man,
processed meats, and a group 1
That's
carcinogens means causes cancer in
causes
causes.
humans. And
cancer. It's
that's,
not as a
by
risk,
the
or
way, like, yeah, exactly. And that's the same category as things like asbestos, right? So, I mean, this is like there should be a label on the hot dog container, like this is, by the way, in the same category as asbestos in terms of causing cancer.
We just
So
filmed this
that's,
right after 4th of July. I feel terrible. I just said hot dog.
oh man,
Joey
yeah,
Chestnut is in a lot of trouble also.
uh, yeah, that's a bummer.
High risk.
But you know what? It's never too late to make a positive change.
You're right.
So we can't look back. We can only look forward. And similarly, red meat, and that includes beef, pork, lamb, these are considered by the World Health Organization as group 2A carcinogens, which means probably causes cancer. This is the same category as things like lead, mustard gas, and
That's so
DDT.
crazy.
And so again, like, why does nobody know about this? So this is out there. I mean, this is the World Health Organization, the global body for health information. So it's pretty well established that meat products are associated with an increased risk of cancer. Now, why, in terms of the mechanism, there's a bunch of reasons. Some of it is hormonal. A lot of animals in the food system are given hormones for growth and things like that. There's substances like IGF-1 that increase with consumption of animal products and dairy products in specific, that increase the risk of cancer. There's also heterocyclic amines, these substances that get released when you use high temperature cooking, like the barbecue for the meat products.
Okay.
Since most people are not eating raw meat.
No.
And if
Yeah.
you did, then there would be different risks, like the risk of infection.
Right.
So,
Damned if you do,
uh,
damned if you don't, kind of thing.
so that, not that we're saying you should do that either. And then the flip side is just the absence of some of the healthy components that protect our body from cancer. And so plant-based foods, many of them contain inherent antioxidants and other compounds that are known to fight cancer. Things like carotenoids that are in carrots, and lycopene that's in tomato products. And that's particularly an important one for prostate cancer. Cooked tomatoes are really a great source of lycopene, which helps to fight the cancer. And also, something very important is fiber. Fiber is found in plant-based foods, and fiber decreases the risk of colon cancer and a lot of other cancers. So there's some bad stuff happening with the animal foods, and then there's some good stuff that's only found in the plant foods, is, I guess, the summary.
So I mean, it works
I
both
think that's
ways.
such an
Then.
important
You're not
takeaway.
yet exposing yourself to the poisonous stuff, and then
Right.
you're instead you're eating the protective stuff. I mean, that's as simple as
Yeah.
it gets.
It almost seems simple, right? It
Yeah.
seems simple that it's just put right there, right? Animal stuff causing harm, and
Well, here's the question though:
the
like, what do
plant
you
stuff.
say to the cynic? You have a patient who comes in and says, whatever I do, I'm going to get cancer, or like, it's already like, obviously we have the data now that supports this, but you still have these people who, are like, breathing gives me cancer, which, no comment. Like, I don't know the data on that, but like, what do
Yeah.
you say to these cynical people, even though when you give them this kind of information?
Yeah. It's a good point, and I mean, we can't always prevent everything. And there are people, who have, let's say, high risk genetics or something else, who have a very strong chance of getting cancer despite, the healthy life that they may lead. And there's a lot of other factors in our environment that we can't control.
Right.
Air pollution and other things that contribute to the risk of cancer, that you're just living your daily life and you get exposed to outside of your will. But I think, especially given all of that, if we want to prevent cancer or prevent erectile dysfunction, or lead our best life, why not take charge of the things that we actually can control?
I think that's such an important point that our listeners should really take from that. Like there are a lot of things that are not in our control. And so, it is what it is. But something like our diet, which can be in our control, this is something that we can do. And the information is right there. The animal stuff, the processed meats are causing harm, but the plants are offering a lot of benefits. And we're showing this in a lot of the research that's being published out there. So, that's just something to think about, at your next meal, right?
For sure.
I think so. There's this article in the New York Post earlier this year that was summarizing a study, and the headline said, like, eating a hot dog takes 36 minutes off your life or
Oh
something like
man.
that, and I had some people say to me, oh, well, like, I guess I'll lose the 36 minutes, So, I mean, not everybody is necessarily striving to, lengthen their life as much as possible. And of course,
Right.
there is the importance of quality of life. But,
Right.
frankly, like there's a lot of really delicious plant based foods. And if you really just can't get away from the taste of meat and things like that, or you enjoy these things, the substitutes that have come out in recent years are just quite amazing. Some
Absolutely.
of the plant based burgers
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sausages are extremely compelling, and they're still extremely processed foods. So they're by no means a health food, but at least they don't have the same cancer causing properties, and they also don't have any cholesterol because cholesterol is only found in animal products. So even when we're talking about highly processed, unhealthy plant based foods, they're still missing some of the really bad stuff that we want to try to avoid.
And I think that's a great point. I mean, I think that some people get confused between plant based and healthy. And when you have those processed things, that you can still get at McDonald's, the alternate plant based burgers, the
Yeah.
sausages, that doesn't mean that they're healthy necessarily, but it does mean that basically, you don't have to eat the meat. So there are benefits potentially for it, but it doesn't mean like it's not low calorie or anything like that. And I think that's what people kind of get confused along the way.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think if you were having to eat at a fast food restaurant, if you're somewhere where that's the only food available or you're on the go, still the plant based burger would be a better choice than the regular
Right.
burger. A salad would be an even better choice, but many people may not find that sufficiently filling for that meal. But I definitely don't think that it's a good idea to eat these substitute meats on a daily basis, but they can be really, really helpful for people who are trying to transition, especially. So I think they do have an important place, and they still have some benefits compared to what they're replacing, but I wouldn't counsel somebody that Beyond Burgers are a health food that I
Right.
think they should consume regularly.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, I think that whole thing about using it as a transition thing is, I think, important because it is hard to change your diet just cold turkey like that. I mean, I've tried,
Especially
I've tried
guys.
to,
Guys
go
picture,
vegetarian.
they're all like
God,
we're all like manly red meat cut into a steak,
hit the
have a
grill,
hamburger,
right,
have a hot dog.
right.
So I think it is a big challenge to convince a lot of guys to do this kind of thing. I mean, have you found it
Right,
to be
right.
challenging in regards to, your patient population when you do counsel them?
Well, I think there's definitely a lot of myths out there about meat and masculinity. And I think most people don't know that meat actually is associated with a higher risk of erectile
That's
dysfunction. So
yeah. So tell
actually,
us
meat
about
is like
that.
not what you.
Let's segue
Yeah.
into that. Let's talk about ED.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's been shown in many large studies, including big studies out of Harvard University looking at thousands of men, showing that those
Hmm.
who ate more meat had more erectile dysfunction. I think there's a really compelling segment on this in the documentary called The Game
Hmm.
Changers.
On
I
Netflix, right?
I tell my male patients who are concerned about, um, muscle building and sexual function and some of these issues, that's really a great film to watch, because they take you through the journey of a bunch of professional athletes and bodybuilders who
Right.
are all plant-based, and they actually show on screen an experiment with sexual health. So the whole thing is pretty interesting, but I would say The Game Changers is a nice source to learn more about some of this.
I mean, listen. So if you want to keep it up, have a carrot, have a tomato, and instead, have some legumes instead of a
Eggplant.
steak.
Eggplant.
Eggplant. I do love eggplant.
Eggplant. Oh, that's a
Also,
good
the
one.
Yes.
icon. It's perfect. Yeah.
Yes. No, but the thing is, if you think about it, like the penis and erections, it's all about blood flow, right?
Right.
And the blood
Right.
vessels in the penis are really small. Okay. So if you're having hardening of the blood vessels and other places of the body, the penis is a very sensitive indicator, because if things start getting narrow in there due to buildup of plaques and cholesterol and all
Right.
of this, then the blood can't get in there for the erections. So, often they call erectile dysfunction the canary in the coal mine,
Right.
that is like a
Yep.
5 years earlier than somebody having a heart attack. And so this can be the first place where those blood vessels start to show all the problems that are happening throughout the whole body. So, if you want to keep those blood vessels open, then, having a healthy lifestyle is really important.
No, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been shown that plant-based diets are good for the heart, right? And good erections, like you said, dependent on good blood flow, right? We keep pounding that. It's good blood flow that is really important, and so that's tied in with the plant-based diets. Are there any other, topics in men's health that plant-based diets can, potentially impact?
Oh, I mean, a very long list. So we talked about cancer, and we talked about prostate cancer specifically,
right.
but other forms of cancer more broadly as well. Um, so we discussed erectile dysfunction and the links between that with cardiovascular disease. Of course, diabetes is a big
Right.
one where plant-based diets can be very helpful. Diabetes is another real problem in terms of erectile function, and it's just something that's
Right.
super common in the population.
Unfortunately.
But
Yeah.
interestingly, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and a bunch of other medical societies came out with a position statement this year that said that dietary modification, and specifically with an emphasis on whole plant-based foods, is a way to reverse diabetes. And
Wow.
also,
Wow.
conversely, they said that very low carb diets are not recommended due to cardiovascular risk as a long-term solution for type 2 diabetes.
So Atkins diet, bad.
Right.
Atkins diet, not an ideal situation.
Well, the thing is, you can sometimes lose weight rapidly with one of these low carb,
Keto
high
and all
protein
those
diets that typically include animal proteins. Now, you can do a keto plant-based diet.
Yeah.
That is possible, but that's a lot more challenging to do, and probably just not necessary, because carbs are not all evil, and they're also not all equal. And so with a whole foods plant-based diet, the emphasis is on whole grains and legumes. So if you're getting carbs because you're eating things like quinoa and beans, those are actually healthy carbs. And if you're not consuming them with all the meat and the saturated fat, they are not going to spike your blood sugar in the same way. So it's very complicated, but the whole mechanism of how, blood sugars increase and things like that, it really depends on the whole nutrient profile of everything in the dish, not just like one specific food.
It's
But
the
I
big
think we need
picture,
to get
like
away
you
from
said.
myths.
Yeah. It's kind of like you got to see the big picture, just like in anything you're doing, and you got to be, selective and make the appropriate decisions. And I think it's pretty awesome, and it makes sense. Now, what about kidney stones? Do we have any data? Because one thing that we really know is for as urologists, we all know kidney stones are definitely impacted by lifestyle and diet. So, what do we know about plant-based diet and its impact on kidney stones?
That's a great question. Yeah, kidney stones are super common and something else where diet is a big deal. So, kidney stones, it is widely recognized that animal protein increases the risk of kidney stones because it makes the urine very acidic.
Right.
And that creates an environment that you're more likely to form kidney stones. So, patients who have kidney stones or are trying to prevent kidney stones want to get more of their protein from plant sources. Um, Another important consideration is that plant based foods like fruits and vegetables have a lot of citrate. And this is a
Yeah.
compound that makes it less easy for stones to form in the urine. So if you're eating plant-based proteins and eating fruits and vegetables, then you're getting less acidic urine that has more citrate. I think the main thing to watch out for with the plant-based diet goes back to what we talked about earlier. Not all vegan diets are equal. Not all any kind of diet are equal, and just watching out for too much processed foods, because one of the biggest things that causes kidney stones is salt. And something like a Beyond Burger
Mm.
has a lot of
A lot of
salt,
salt.
as does regular burgers. Actually, chicken is one of the highest sources of sodium in the US diet, and cheese has a lot of salt. So, whatever it is that you're eating, whether it's plant based or animal based, you do want to watch out for salt if you're trying to prevent kidney stones.
Yeah, of course. I think it's an excellent
Gotcha.
point, and there are certain vegetables if you have an issue that we can always talk about that you should be careful of that have high oxalates and stuff like that. But in general, I think the message is 100% clear with what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. I think we're go ahead.
Dr. Loeb. Well, yeah. One thing, Doctor, I know you published on like plant-based like milk alternatives. Could you just kind of like touch a little bit on that? Just I know you kind of talked about it with like kidney stones when the recent papers you
Yeah,
published.
that's a very good point. So, one kind of misconception about kidney stones over the years, because most kidney stones contain calcium. So, people thought, oh,
Right.
if the stone is made of calcium, maybe calcium is bad and I shouldn't be eating calcium.
Right.
But actually, they found exactly the opposite, that you don't want to have a
Right.
low calcium diet. You do need normal calcium in the diet, so like at least 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day. Now, a lot of people, unfortunately, and including in the medical community, equate dairy with calcium as if those two words are the same or interchangeable. But there's a lot of problems with dairy consumption. Dairy has been shown to greatly increase the risk of prostate cancer. It's also associated with
Mm-hmm.
breast cancer,
Breast cancer.
bowel issues. 2/3 of the
Mm-hmm.
global population is lactose intolerant anyway, so many people just
Right.
can't really eat it. So the good news is that calcium isn't just dairy. There's calcium in lots of other foods that are actually good for kidney stones. So some of the plant milks are fortified with calcium. Many of these have as much, or in some cases even more, calcium than dairy milk in a serving. Similarly, some plant based yogurts are fortified with
Mm.
calcium. You can also get calcium in orange juice, is often fortified. Some cereals are fortified. And what Justin brought up earlier about got to watch out a little bit for some fruits and vegetables that are higher in oxalates. This is a substance that could increase kidney stones. And there are a
Huh.
few specific ones that you want to avoid for people with kidney stones, like rhubarb is the very highest. Spinach
Hmm.
is also pretty high. But then there's also other vegetables that contain calcium that are not high in oxalates, like kale would be a better base for a salad because it has a lower content of oxalates, but it has a lot of calcium. So you could imagine, somebody who wants to make sure they're getting enough calcium, they can have one of the fortified plant milks or orange juice at breakfast with a
Mm,
cereal that has calcium. Have a kale salad at lunch with some of these other things like tomatoes that may be good in terms of cancer risk. So there's a lot of ways to work around it and make sure that you're still getting a very well-rounded diet. And there's just so many plant milks out there nowadays,
What are you
and
drinking right
people
now? What's your
swear.
yeah.
favorite? What's your favorite?
Uh, I kind of mix it up. Sometimes I drink Oatly oat milk, which is calcium fortified, Silk soy milk, Ripple has a pea protein based
Ooh,
milk that a lot of people like because it's very high in protein. I just kind of pick different ones, but
I've done
I think
almond
it's a
milk
bit of,
forever. I always enjoyed almond milk. I'm a big fan of almond milk. I
yeah,
think it just tastes good.
I
Yeah.
think just taste different things and see which strikes your fancy. They're all very different, and but I think to look at the label, just like with any food, so just like
Right.
regular chocolate milk has a lot of sugar, some of the plant milks have some sort of flavor and have added sugar. Other ones are completely unsweetened and have almost no calories, but they're like very plain.
Yeah,
So,
that does.
somewhere in the middle, maybe the most
Right.
palatable option that's not like sugary and caloric, but also is not like, watery and tasteless. So, I think just get a couple to try out and see if you find one. And the nice thing is, many of them are available in a shelf stable
Yeah.
form. So, for families and other
Right.
people who find themselves, constantly struggling to keep up with this stuff, it's very nice to have something that can just sit on the shelf in the pantry,
Right.
until you're ready to use it.
It's a great point. Now, so at this point, we've talked about all these amazing ways in which, a plant based diet can impact a men's health. We talked about cancer, heart disease, erections, stones, diabetes. Obviously, now it's very compelling,
A
very,
lot
very
of
compelling.
things.
Now, the question is, though, a guy comes to you or comes to us after listening to this and they're interested in starting this. What's the best way? How do you recommend someone really getting into or trying to transition to a plant-based diet? Is it talking to a nutritionist? Is it getting online? Is there a specific resource that you recommend?
Yeah, uh, any of the above, whatever is going to be helpful. First of all, I think adding new things before subtracting things is a helpful way to make
Oh, that's a great way
transitions
of looking
so
at
that
it.
you're not feeling like you're deprived. So just trying a bunch of new things
Right.
before you give up anything so that you don't feel like, oh, now I can't eat that. I can't eat that. Now I don't know what to eat. So just in the course
Right.
of your diet, just try integrating some new foods, go to a vegan restaurant and order some, an eggplant dish or a bean dish that you've never tried, and maybe it's delicious. Or try buying a plant
Yeah.
milk or two and see how it tastes in different recipes and foods. And there's so many blogs, there's good social media content on, you know even just things like, how do I substitute out eggs in baking? Like, turns out you can use the liquid in a can of chickpeas, has like almost the same
I've had those. It
consistency as
is
egg whites.
delicious. It's delicious. Like chickpea baked goods. Awesome.
I'm intrigued.
Really
Yeah.
tasty.
So just stuff like that. Avocado can create a base for things like brownies. I mean, there's a lot of hacks that are very
Wow.
strange, but great cooks and chefs have come up with all kinds of ways to integrate literally whole foods into baking and into cuisine in innovative ways to get those extra veggies. Specific resources. So, as I mentioned, I think the Game Changers documentary is very motivational and helpful for men. Seeing a nutritionist is great, or just taking a course. There's even free courses. For example, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. The website is pcrm.org. They have a lot of free courses. They have one like Fight Diabetes with Food. They have a 21-day vegan kickstart. They have a plant powered weight loss course. So these are all like online courses taught by really, highly respected physicians and nutritionists. So doing one of those programs could be helpful. They also have all kinds of recipes on their website. Forks Over Knives is a great resource. Dr. Greger, he wrote a book called How Not to Die that's very
Great
motivating with a
title.
lot of great tips. Um, so yeah, his website is nutritionfacts.org, and they have really excellent information, constantly keeping up with the new studies and lots of recipes. The other thing is I like the app Happy Cow because anywhere in the world it can tell you where plant-based food can be found.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
I've used it in New York City, but also in Mexico, Sweden. So it just geolocates anywhere that serves plant-based stuff. So even if you're traveling or on the go, like it's very easy through this app or website.
That's
Yeah,
really
it's
cool.
it's really a great resource.
So it sounds to me pretty much like there is no excuse anymore. We're not 10 years ago where we didn't have access to these things. It was inconvenient to do this kind of stuff. We've really changed and there's been so many ways to accommodate this now, whether it's eating out is not a problem or, shopping anymore. For me, someone like me, I have made it to be more. I know the data. Like I try to make a couple more vegetarian meals a week. Like that's. I mean, I'm not like I would like to get to that level, but it's harder. So I try to do at least at least a decent amount of more vegetarian vegan options, and I find them delicious. I really enjoy them, and some of the best meals I've been cooking are those kinds of meals. And so I just want to say, like, it is possible to do. It's not like it's not impossible. So I think that there really aren't many excuses anymore if you're looking to make excuses.
Yeah, I agree. Our whole family has been doing the Whole Foods plant-based for almost 3 years now. So, and I also think exercise is very important. And, so I am practicing what I preach. Like I really do believe in this. And I also
Yes.
believe that it's not
It's awesome.
aspirational because not only was I able to do it despite like a very busy work schedule and frequent international travel, but even my dad was able to do it, and he is somebody who ate things like pork rinds and just all
Mm.
sorts of uh, unbelievable animal based products, and has completely converted over because he found stuff that was delicious enough that he was willing to eat it instead. So I'd say the bottom line is find what you find, tasty and interesting that's going to make you want to eat it. So you're not feeling like you're sacrificing your quality of life in order to achieve this better health.
I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I did was when I was learning a lot about this information, went really deep into it about like 8 months ago. And the way I started was I just like did one day of I was still eating regular, and then the next day all the like whole foods, like plant based kind of foods, I would eat that the next day. But then the day after that, kind of go back, but then just kind of keep going back and forth. And eventually, I was at kind of week on, week off, and I felt like I was still like not like giving up everything all at once. And so there's many ways that you can kind of go about it to really try to get there and try to improve the diet.
Yeah,
So
I think that was a great way to end it. I think that, you provide us with some excellent resources. And this was an awesome conversation, really enlightening conversation. And I think the bottom line
yeah,
is you guys, the listeners, know they can take control of their health. This is one way that you can really take control and improve your health and your overall wellness at almost every level, pretty much, that we've talked about. We talked about pretty much every important aspect of a guy's livelihood. So thank you again, Dr. Loeb. Where can our listeners find you?
Thank you.
Well, I host the Men's Health, a radio show on Sirius XM channel 110. It's on Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. So we do have a lot of good men's health content on there. Or you can find me at Loeb Stacy on Twitter.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks again to our listeners. As always, you can listen to us on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, iTunes. You can also find all of our information on our website. What's our website, Kev?
It's www.themanuppod.com.
You can also follow us on all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter at The Man Up Pod. And you can also reach out to Kevin or I through our social media platforms as well. For Kevin and Dr. Loeb, thanks for listening. Until next time, have a good one.